People die every day, but not everyone sticks the landing. Some go with poetry, some with regret, and some go with a sentence so bizarre, so ridiculous, it makes death feel like the least interesting part of their story. These aren't the goodbyes you hear in movies. These are the ones they don't know how to write into scripts. The weirdest last words ever said. This is Luditox - Oscar Wilde. The name alone wears velvet. He wasn't just a writer, he was a performance, wrapped in silk, sarcasm, and scandal. Born in 1854 in Dublin. Brilliant, flamboyant, sharp as hell. His mother was a poet. His father, a doctor. And Oscar? He was already quoting Latin poetry by age 10. But what set him apart wasn't just intellect, it was that he refused to hide it behind humility. He was tall, flamboyant, magnetic. While other men wore gray, Oscar wore lavender gloves and carried lilies. He didn't just enter a room, he authored it. His plays lit up London stages, satire, wit, elegance. The picture of Dorian Gray, an ideal husband, the importance of being earnest, each one a dagger dipped in honey. But the real performance was offstage. Oscar Wilde was a gay man in Victorian England, where that could get you imprisoned, or worse. In 1895, after a messy affair and a very public trial, Wilde was sentenced to 2 years of hard labor for gross indecency, for love. Prison broke his health, destroyed his reputation. When he came out, he was bankrupt, exiled, alone. He wandered Europe under fake names, writing less, drinking more, until he ended up in Paris, in a cheap hotel room. He spent his final days bedridden, surrounded by peeling wallpaper and unpaid bills. But Oscar never lost his sting. Lying in bed, he looked at the hideous floral wallpaper, turned to the friend beside him, and said, with dry theatrical venom, "My wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One or the other of us has to go." He died soon after. The wallpaper stayed. Oscar Wilde didn't whisper forgiveness. He didn't ask for peace. He left with a punchline. One last jab at a world that never deserved his wit. Because if you live as art, you die as irony. And Wilde? He died fabulously. Winston Churchill. Most people know him as the man who beat Hitler. But what if I told you? His story is weirder, darker, and more chaotic than you were ever taught. He was born rich, went to elite schools, failed almost everything. His teacher said he was lazy, bad at math, and, get this, too arrogant to be helped. He had a lisp. He stuttered. And he once said, "I was not a child prodigy. I was a child problem." Before politics, he fought in wars, literally. On horseback in Sudan, in muddy trenches in France. He once escaped a POW camp by climbing out a bathroom window, wrote a book about it, sold so many copies, it paid for his first run for parliament. But Churchill wasn't just a hero. He was also the architect of failures that killed thousands. In World War I, he led the Gallipoli invasion. It was a disaster. Over 100,000 soldiers died. He was forced to resign, spent his exile painting oil landscapes and plotting a comeback. Then came World War II, London burning, Europe collapsing, Hitler rising. And Churchill stood up, 65 years old, depressed, drunk, brilliant. And he said, "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." His voice became the soundtrack of British resistance. He was a poet of war, a romantic in ruins. But after the war, he lost the next election. That's right, Britain thanked him by kicking him out. He spent his last years writing memoirs, drinking, and slowly forgetting things. He had several strokes, could barely speak. His mind, the weapon that once held off fascism, was failing him. And one quiet afternoon, sitting in his favorite chair, bow tie loose, hand resting on his chest, he said it. Software, dry, final. "I'm bored with it all." That was it. No final rally, no parting roar. Just a man who outlived the war, the glory, and maybe even himself. He defeated one of history's darkest forces. But death? Death doesn't care about speeches. Oklahoma, 1966. The last man to die in the electric chair. His name? James Donald French. Murderer. Cold. Calm. And weirdly funny. Not the kind of funny that makes you laugh. The kind that makes you look around the room and wonder if it's okay to breathe. He'd already killed one man and was sentenced to life in prison. But James? He didn't want life. He wanted attention. So what did he do? He murdered his own cellmate, not for revenge, not out of rage. He just wanted the death penalty. At his trial, he didn't plead insanity. He just smirked. And when they asked why he killed again, he said, "Because I wanted to die." Fast forward to execution day. The press is there, reporters ready with notepads, hoping for something deep, maybe remorse, maybe fear. James looked at them, calm, and said, "How's this for your headline?" "French fries." The guards froze. The reporters didn't even know if they should write it down. But they did. Of course they did. And just like that, James Donald French became a twisted piece of trivia. A man who used his last breath to deliver a punchline in the middle of his own execution. No tears, no apology, just a headline he wrote for himself. And you know what the sickest part is? It worked. Joan Crawford wasn't born a queen. She made herself one. One slap, one spotlight, one headline at a time. Born Lucille Fay, LeSueur in 1904, abandoned by her father, abused by her stepfather, tossed between boarding schools she never finished. What do you do when the world discards you? If you're Joan, you put on heels, set your jaw, and start climbing. She danced in chorus lines, got discovered, renamed, polished, reshaped. Lucille was too ordinary, so the studio gave her a new name, Joan Crawford. She hated it, said it sounded like crawfish, but she made the public love it. By the 1930s, she was the blueprint for the American woman, tough, glamorous, untouchable. Her eyes could cut. Her voice? Command. She won an Oscar in 1945. And when the Academy didn't invite her, she faked an illness and had the award delivered to her bed. With the press watching, but behind the camera, stories began to leak. She was controlling, violent, a perfectionist who screamed at co-stars, terrorized housekeepers, and turned motherhood into something that haunted her children forever. Christina Crawford, her adopted daughter, later wrote a memoir, Mommy Dearest, Wire Hangers, Ice-Cold Punishments, Public Smiles, Private Bruises. The press ate it up. Fans split. Was she a monster? A victim? A myth? Maybe all three. In her final years, Joan faded. The roles stopped. The friends left. The mirrors told her stories she didn't like. But she still had control. She always had control. One morning, near the end, her housekeeper walked in to find Joan lying weak in bed, pale, unmoving. The woman, thinking she was doing the right thing, began to pray. Joan opened her eyes. Her voice was low, tired, but the rage still razor sharp. "Damn it, don't you dare ask God to help me. Not please, not thank you, don't." Even in death, Joan Crawford refused to be saved. She wasn't interested in peace, or redemption, or forgiveness. She was interested in control of her story, of her image, of her exit. Some people die with grace. Joan Crawford died with a line so sharp it sliced through prayer itself. She wasn't asking for heaven, she was demanding the final word. Thomas Edison, the man who gave the world the light bulb. But to be fair, he also gave us the phonograph, and motion pictures, and 1,093 patents, more than any other human of his time. But Edison didn't just invent things, he reshaped reality. Before him, nights were ruled by candles and silence. After him, they were ruled by light and music. He wasn't born into brilliance, he was born nearly deaf, kicked out of school at age 12. A teacher called him too slow to learn anything. So he taught himself, built a lab in his basement, sold newspapers on trains to pay for chemicals and wires. He turned failure into ritual, said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." His lab once burned down. He called the fire beautiful. He turned carbon and copper into magic, and the world followed him into the future, glowing. But no mind lasts forever, and even the man who bottled electricity couldn't stop the charge running out. By 1931, Edison was fading, frail, bedridden, surrounded by family, doctors, and silence. As he lay there, barely able to speak, he looked out the window. The sun was setting, light streaming through the curtains, a light he himself had made possible. And then he whispered something. Gentle, final. "It's very beautiful over there." No science, no formula, just a sentence. Was he talking about death or another room, another world? We'll never know. But maybe, just maybe, the man who lit up our world saw something even brighter waiting for him. In the end, Thomas Edison didn't invent a final word. He discovered one, Leonardo da Vinci. The name alone feels heavy. Not just a painter, not just an inventor, a man who tried to understand everything. Born in 1452, illegitimate son of a notary and a peasant. No surname, no inheritance, just questions. By age 15, he was apprenticed in Florence. By 25, he was sketching flying machines while others were still trying to invent buttons. He dissected bodies in the basement, then went upstairs and painted angels. He wrote backwards, in mirror script, partly to hide his ideas, partly because his brain moved faster than his hand. He painted the Mona Lisa and never considered it finished. He designed bridges, weapons, tanks, hydraulic machines, most of which the world wasn't ready for, some of which he never even built. Because here's the secret: Leonardo rarely finished anything. He was distracted, curious to the point of obsession. He would abandon commissions halfway through, not out of laziness, but because he'd had a new idea. He wanted to fly. He wanted to talk to God through gears and pigments. And maybe, in his mind, he never flew high enough. On his deathbed, in 1519, surrounded by royalty, clergy, and silence, he looked up and said, "I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have." Think about that. The man who painted The Last Supper, who designed a flying machine centuries before the Wright brothers, who redefined what it meant to be human, apologized for not doing enough. Maybe that's what genius really is. Never being satisfied, always chasing a ghost of perfection. Da Vinci didn't just leave behind art. He left behind unrest, a sketchbook filled with brilliance, and pages unfinished. In the end, the man who tried to capture the divine apologized for falling short. Karl Marx, a man with a pen in one hand and a firestorm in the other. He was born in 1818 in Germany, to a comfortable family, and he could have had a comfortable life. But Marx wasn't interested in comfort. He studied law but found it boring, so he turned to philosophy and quickly decided that everything needed to be questioned: governments, religion, ownership, society itself. He believed history wasn't written by kings, it was written by class struggle. He wrote, "The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles." And with that sentence, he cracked the world in half. He and Friedrich Engels co-wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848, a slim, fiery book that shook empires. It began with a warning: a specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism. The ruling class didn't laugh. They panicked. Marx was exiled, rejected, watched. He spent most of his life broke, coughing, and angry in London. He worked in the British Library by day and buried 3 of his children by night. He drank, he smoked, he raged. He saw revolutions rise and fall. He wrote thousands of pages, but only a few were published while he was alive. In the end, his ideas outlived him. They ignited nations, toppled monarchs, built walls, and tore others down. March 1883. Karl Marx is dying. His housekeeper leans in. She gently asks, "Would you like to say some last words?" He looks at her and says, "With one last breath of fire, last words are for fools who haven't said enough." That was it. No God, no regrets. Just a verbal slap to the idea of deathbed poetry. He didn't whisper into the light, he snarled at it. Because Marx believed the only thing worse than being exploited is leaving the stage quietly. Michel de Nostradamus. But you know him as Nostradamus, a man wrapped in myth, mystery, and maybe madness. Born in 1503, in plague-ridden France, he lost his family to sickness. He became a doctor, a healer, and according to some, a sorcerer. He studied the stars, the moon, and medicine. He prescribed rose pills and bloodletting, but also astrology, ritual, and prayer. In 1555, he published a collection of 942 strange poetic predictions, written in riddles, symbols, and half-hidden Latin. And yet, over the centuries, people have claimed he predicted the French Revolution, the rise of Hitler, 9/11, and even the end of the world. Skeptics say his writing is too vague. Believers say, that's the point. But Nostradamus didn't just predict the world, he predicted himself. On the night before his death in 1566, he turned to his assistant, calm, and said, "Tomorrow at sunrise I shall no longer be here." He wasn't sick, he wasn't dying, he just knew. The next morning, his bed was empty, his body cold. Was it coincidence? Or the ultimate proof? He never said goodbye. He didn't need to. He left behind a world still trying to decipher him, and a death that felt written. They say death is the final chapter, but sometimes it's the punchline. We heard poets whisper, dictators shrug, and madmen joke their way into the abyss. Some met death with poetry, others with pure chaos, but all of them left us something: a sentence, a moment, a truth, or a total lie, frozen in time. If you made it this far, well, you're officially part of the weird ones. Hit subscribe. We've got more endings to ruin for you. This is Luditox. We tell stories that end strangely.